All right, ladies, hello and welcome to our climate change note video. So, already on your Unit 3 notes packet, you have completed this facts in 4 minutes section that came from a video that you watched. And over here, I just want you to pause this video and draw or write out what you think of when you hear climate change. So, what are some things that come to mind when you think of climate change or when you hear the word climate change? So, go ahead and pause the video, take a couple minutes to spend some time just brainstorming in this section of the notes, and we will move on to the actual notes down here. So, a big part of climate change is this thing called greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases are any gas that absorbs infrared radiation and traps heat in the atmosphere. Now, there are several examples of greenhouse gases listed below. We're going to go through them. The first one is methane, and this is a gas emitted by cattle. So when cows or bulls fart, they release methane gas, and that's actually not that great for our environment. Methane also comes from landfills. So then we have carbon dioxide, which is probably a little common and familiar to you. This is a byproduct of burning fossil fuels. Then we have this really long word, chlorofluorocarbons. And these come from aerosol sprays and refrigerants. Finally, and this one's a little strange, water vapor is considered a greenhouse gas. And this is a gas from evaporation, transpiration, and volcanic activity. So those are our four main greenhouse gases. Now let's talk about the effect of these gases and kind of the steps. So these are the steps in order of how this greenhouse effect happens. So solar radiation passes through the atmosphere. That's the first thing that happens. So the sun comes through Earth's atmosphere, which is right here. Then some radiation is reflected back into space. So some of the radiation bounces back based on the surfaces, and we'll talk about that later. But some reflects back into space, and then radiation is absorbed by Earth and converted to heat. So down here, you can see that the sun, that heat is being absorbed on the land, and it's being converted into heat, which is why it's kind of this orangish red color. Then greenhouse gases absorb that radiation and reflect it in all directions, causing, sorry, the A got caught up there, causing Earth's surface to gain more heat. So that's a really important part of this, is that the greenhouse gases will absorb this radiation that's coming down, reflect it in all types of directions like CO2 is doing over here, and that causes the Earth's surface to gain more heat. And that is an issue. So let's talk about a few more examples of things that can cause our atmosphere to get warmer. The first one is called the albedo effect. Now, albedo is the amount of radiation an object reflects. Albedo score is on a scale of 0 to 1 and reflects the percent of reflection. So albedo is how much of the Earth's, the sun that's coming down is being reflected back up into the atmosphere. So, give me 1 second. Okay, so a high albedo reflects large amounts of radiation, and that would be a score, an albedo score of 1 or really close to 1. A low albedo reflects small amounts of radiation, and that would be a score of 0 or something closer to 0. So then we have this thing called snow temperature feedback. And that means as global temperatures rise, snow melts. White snow reflects large amounts of radiation. This lack of snow can lead to less radiation, and that'll cause less reflection of radiation, causing more radiation to be absorbed and temperatures to then rise. So we would call this kind of process a positive feedback loop. Okay, let's move on to carbon sink. So a carbon sink is an artificial or natural reservoir that collects and stores carbon containing compounds. Now, there are two primary natural carbon sinks. The first one is oceans or bodies of water, and CO2 is dissolved and utilized by phytoplankton and turned into organic matter. The second natural carbon sink is a forest, and trees photosynthesize and remove CO2 from the atmosphere and store it in sugar compounds. All right, final thing for this note is the global effects of climate change. So I'm going to start with down here. So if global temperatures increase, this can cause a lot of things to happen. We can have increased wildfires. We could also have melting ice caps. Melting ice caps could lead to sea levels rising, which could lead to a lack of fresh water availability. Sea levels rising could also cause flooding, and flooding could cause people to be displaced from their homes. So you can see how one thing, just our temperature increasing, can cause all of these other really crazy things to happen. And that concludes our note video. So there is a worksheet for you to do on this stuff. You can find that on Canvas. Come find me if you have any questions.